Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be on the globe. This is Henry and Friends live right around the world. I hope you're doing really well, and I'm just checking in to see how your weekend is progressing. Please leave your comments below and let me know what's cooking, what you've been up to. All I can say here is in Sydney, Australia, after I can't even remember how many months, Monday is Freedom Day. So we're looking forward to that. And I tell you, the first thing I'm going to do is get a haircut. That's my highlight for this weekend. My sister went back to New York City after spending nearly 6 weeks in Sydney, 2 of which was in quarantine. But really looking forward to you joining us, your comments, saying hello, telling us how your weekend is. And always, as always, pulling up a chair, making yourselves comfortable, grabbing a cup of tea. I'm actually having my decaffeinated oatmeal with honey specialty that I've now started to drink in the morning, which I'm actually really enjoying. And actually, I was speaking to somebody about caffeine literally a few days ago, and they said that they stopped drinking coffee and the lack of anxiety, the reduction of anxiety after not drinking caffeine. And I tried it, and I have to tell you, after the withdrawal, it's been amazing. But whatever your tipple is, whether it's a cup of coffee, a pot of tea, a cocktail, if it's the right time zone, we welcome you right around the globe. We have a phenomenal show. Really want to invite you with your comments, your thoughts, because it's going to be a really active show. By popular demand, and we had quite a few little messages that we've been getting through henryandfriends.live, our website, so you can always connect with me. There was a want to have Sacha Kaluri back, who's live from Melbourne and behind our stage right now. The show that we had a few months ago was talking about what we want to ask kids, what you want to ask kids. But this weekend, we're going to be talking about the secret world of your teenager and how to uncover it. So I think you're going to really enjoy the show. It's a Bobby Dazzler, as we say in Sydney, Australia. And let's do a little bit of a countdown, welcoming you to Henry and Friends Live, right around the globe. Here we go. Interestingly enough, I was just coming off the phone to my sister just before we went live around the globe here on Henry and Friends Live. Welcome. And talking about my niece and nephew and kids, and understanding their language, which is really quite extraordinary. And I have to say, it is a different language. It's a different mindset. And I think so many people that take care of kids under parental supervision or guidance, or we all have a connection with the younger generation. And I think it's so important to understand how to actually communicate, how to uncover that. What's the best ways, and what way do we reach out and make sure we're still in connection? Because a lot of us that are our audience understand that, when we were younger, especially in our teenage years, no one understood us, right? So now the next generation, do we understand them? So today we're really going to be talking about teenage secrets uncovered, the secret world of your teenager. And I have to tell you, we have a fantastic guest, Sacha Kaluri, which I'll introduce in a moment. But just to do a time call, as the time zones have changed, it is now exactly 3:34 in the afternoon in Los Angeles, the Pacific time zone. That makes it 5:30 p.m. in the East Coast of America, which makes it 10:30 p.m. in London Greenwich Mean Time, and that makes it exactly 7:30 a.m. Sunday morning in Tokyo. And here in Sydney and Melbourne, where we're coming live, it's 8:34 a.m. And let me just do you a little introduction to Sacha right after this slide. Welcome back. It's Henry and Friends live right across the globe. I'm Henry Weinreich, your host. And this morning we're talking about the secret world of your teenager uncovered and how to actually uncover the secret world of your teenager. We have coming up, and this is the second time we've had Sacha Kaluri, an expert in this teenage field. She's actually one of the top 50 business leaders in Australia. She's the founder of the motivational company. She's the author of The Two Worlds of Your Teenager, radio host, and actually the founder and creator, co-founder and creator of Australia Teenage Expo, Australia's largest youth educational event. Welcome on board, Sacha. How are you?
Hey, Henry. Thanks so much for having me back. I'm really excited. And thank you so much to all the viewers that have said back by popular demand. I mean, that's exciting to who would have thought back by popular demand? That's really exciting. So thank you so much for having me back.
Well, it's an absolute delight. You're coming in live from Melbourne, Australia, so we're on the same time zone. And it's really interesting.
In the greatest lockdown city of the world, the longest city, that's been locked down. That is a prize that I will award, and I think I'll put that on my resume. I've survived the longest city lockdown in the world.
Oh, God, you're killing. You always make me
laugh.
It's a
global resume now. It's a global resume.
I mean, this is a global. Well, that's interesting because I mean, at all times, and now with this hybrid of communication, a lot of online, a lot of offline. The interesting thing is that you do have a lot of people really wanting to know globally from our show. How did you actually get into communicating, first of all, with children? Why is it that you can speak their language, and what can we learn? How did that come about? Why did you become a child whisperer?
Oh, look, I'm just really passionate about teenagers. Probably because I don't feel like I've grown up at all, and I still feel like I'm, although I'm 46 or whatever it is that I am, I can't even remember. Sometimes I've been locked up for too long, and I don't think that the last 2 years. So I'm just going to go for 44 because that was the last time I actually got to celebrate it. So let's just go with that one. Look, I remember I've always been someone who's been very, very interested in personal development and self-development and learning about yourself and figuring yourself out and just unpacking all of those parts of me. And along the way, that's actually meant that I really needed to reflect on my own childhood and my own teenage years. And so it was a great place to be able to look back on there. And then once reflecting on that, really being able to say, what is it that I missed out of in my own teenage years? And if I could have gone back and met myself and said to myself, what is it that you can say to yourself to best help you navigate through those years? I went, well, look, I better learn about that and study that and really find out about what I would have said to myself. And in amongst that, I was then able to go back and give those tips to young people. And that's now been my career, and I've been doing that for 23 years.
So put yourself in the shoes of kids. One of the first things I want to bring up, and one of the topics that we want to discuss right away here, is creating a space so that they can say anything. Explain to us what that means.
Look, what that actually means is creating a non-judgmental space where they feel open to be able to approach you. And that actually means at any time. It really means that they have an ability to know that you will have some sort of understanding or connection to what that does. Now, that's not a magic thing where you get to wake up one day and say, I'm going to create this space. Creating this space is almost like building any other relationship. It just takes time over and over and over. And one of the things that I will probably say over and over during this interview is that we will make mistakes as parents, obviously, and there is that space where we will need to navigate ourselves and say, did I do that properly then? Did I could have done something in a better way now? How can I constantly create that space where it means that I'm open? And that actually means by watching our own language, because sometimes, again, in the conversations that they may be hearing us have with other adults or amongst our own family or amongst our own partners as well, by really making sure that we create that space where they can have a conversation with us at all times. And sometimes that can actually be doing that from a very young age. So starting that conversation when they're younger, and then it's not a miracle of waking up and saying, oh, okay, now I have to start this from scratch. But if parents, for example, are now saying, oh, I haven't necessarily been able to create that space, and maybe I didn't do that from when they were a young age, and I now
Yes.
need to reflect on that, it's okay to be able to say to them, I've realised I've made a mistake.
Wow.
But I didn't know then, and now I know better, because you only know what you know. You don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. And so you can actually go back and say, I've reflected on that. My upbringing has meant that, I didn't not necessarily talk about these things.
That's
I'm now
wonderful.
being able to realize that, that wasn't right. Doing it the way my parents did it, now I have to realize that things have to be done differently. So I'm apologizing, and I would like to be able to create that space. So I might stuff up along the way, but
Yes.
just know that my intention is right in how I'm doing that.
So it's
And the
rebuilding.
intention creates the experience. So if you have that intention in the first place to be able to do that, and again, when you're navigating with a teenager in this world of communication, they're also finding their way as well on how they can speak to you. So it's really important to have that back and forth. It's not about somebody being the leader in this session. It's about saying, we're two people navigating this space. And when we say two people, it actually can mean that with one teenager, you can have multiple teenagers in the house.
Yes.
One way of speaking to them will work, and then the next child, it just doesn't work at all. So
Well,
it's
here's the
about
beauty.
having to find each individual way of communication, which is
So
hard
it's
work, parents. It's hard work, and I'm not even
look.
going to say that it's easy, because you finally get it with one and it doesn't work with the other,
Well, that's why
and
this
you're
show is so.
exhausted.
That's why this show is so popular, because it's an insight. So really building credibility, whether you've started right in the beginning or being honest that, it's a mistake, because we are all human beings. Here's the beauty. And I was just speaking literally to my friend this week, because of course, talking about the secret world of your teenager uncovered. If you have just joined us, this is Henry and Friends Live. We have a special guest live from Melbourne, Ms. Sacha Kaluri. I call her the child whisperer. We're talking about teenage secrets uncovered. Now, coming back to you, Sacha, here was an interesting one. So during this week, I spoke to my friends, and a lot of them are, having parenting, whether they're uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, and the interesting thing that came up
Grandparents,
is grandparents
grandparents,
and great
grandparents are
grandparents.
raising their grandchildren as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. And, and single parents. Anyway, all that. And they said to me, oh, by the way, did you know that the big deal at the moment with kids is talking about pronouns? And I want you to explain that. And sexuality, polyamorous, aromantic, bisexual, homosexual, lesbian, experimenting, curious are all words that are in the playground. Can you help us with what does somebody that takes care of children or is parental or parenting, how do they even start embracing that topic in uncovering and speaking to them? Where do you go from there?
The first thing that I would say, and this is something that I've changed my own language around in my family, is just those little things that you'll say when you grow up and you get married, or your wife or your husband will do this, or when you get a girlfriend, or when you get a boyfriend, or blah blah blah, those kind of terms. I've now just changed it to, when you meet somebody, when you get into a relationship, that's it. Because what that does is it's creating an open, honest space. So they will get into relationships. They will meet people along the way. So there's no restriction on what that is. Oh, I've got a really great story where I've had young people come to me and say, they've grown up with parents that were very, very open-minded around all of this. They never had an issue to begin to think wherever direction they would go with their own sexuality. And they said it was actually about coming out to themselves, and they needed to go away and just discover who they were, okay, in order to come back and say, this is what I want to be called. So leaving that conversation opened and not saying, hang on a second, what are you? What do you identify as? And they're not quite sure. And even though they may be 13 and right now they're saying, I'm identifying myself as whatever it might be, they may change that identity next month. They may change it next week. They may change it in 5 years' time. And then as a parent, you're trying to just figure that out. So
Yeah.
I'm saying just open to whatever. You want to be called that, identify as that, whatever it might be, just go with it. That doesn't mean that in your own private way or in your own time with either your friends or family that you don't go, hang on, this is blowing my mind. I'm not understanding it. But just to them to be able to say, hey, I'm learning this space too. Because the sooner you learn a pronoun, a new one's coming out. And you
New
kind
ones
of
are,
saying,
yeah.
new ones are coming out, and you're like, I didn't even know that existed, or I didn't, I never even thought that that was a possibility. I mean, growing up for us, it was just, you're either gay or straight. Really, that's all our options. Whereas now, there's
So many.
there's so many different things, and none of us are keeping up, let alone young people. The thing is that they're really okay with that. So when somebody comes
Right.
out, they're really okay with it. So you need to be okay with it as much as we need to be able to say, we need to learn to change our language because it's not going away. And in fact, we're embracing it even more. So we need to get with it and learn it and understand and accept it and just say, we are who we are. We are, at the end of the day, we are human beings. That's what we
Well,
are.
this is
That's the
really
detail.
enlightening. I just flashed up the graphic, honesty and vulnerability. I'm going to come back to you in 30 seconds, Sacha, because we are halfway through the show, believe it or not. It is exactly in Los Angeles, 5:45 in the evening. That makes it quarter to, sorry, the time changes, 4:45 in the afternoon, 6:45 in the afternoon, in the evening in New York City on a Saturday. It is 11:15 Greenwich Mean Time in London, and that makes it 9:15 in Sydney, Australia, and Melbourne. And by the way, because we've got this youth series, The Secret World of Your Teenager Uncovered, well, youth, depending on what your age group is, we have an amazing show next weekend, because I got onto this whole thing about, the next and new generation. And it is next weekend with Ms. Zahaba Robinson, the next generation Z of women's entrepreneurship. So that's going to be an amazing show. I know you, Sacha, will really love that. You are on Henry and Friends Live, part 2 of the interview with Ms. Sacha Kaluri. The next thing I want to talk to you about is, what do you mean when you say connect with them at their level, Sacha? What does that mean?
Okay, that actually, when I think about those kind of, look, teenagers will be quite erratic. That's, how their mind works. And they will want to connect with you at the most bizarre times. And that is probably the time when you are at your most vulnerable, you are at your busiest, you are at the time where there's nothing left to give. And that is exactly why raising a teenager is so hard work. And what you'll find is that is the exact moment where you need to step into that zone and say, I have got the moment now that I can actually speak to them. And I've got a great example of that. I was working with a family, and they were really, really struggling to connect with their young person. And their young person was having some social issues. And finally, but at the same time, the parents were having some, serious marital issues at the same time. And finally, this young person was invited to a party and went along to a party and went out on the Saturday night and had this great night. And the mum had dropped him off, and the dad was going to pick him up later on in that night. And it was actually the first time that the parents had been alone in the house for some time, because this young person was at home quite often, and the parents were never alone, and they were struggling. They were really, really struggling in their own marriage. And, as most relationships do, when they are really struggling and they get that 5 minutes alone, instead of probably connecting, what they did was they had just this almighty argument, and it really blew up for them. And it was quite a tough time for both those parents. And what had happened was the mum had gone to bed, and she had just was crying her eyes out from this huge, unleash of stuff that was going on between her and her husband. Went to bed. Husband went to pick up the young person at the party. And during that party was the first time that their son had actually kissed someone. and the mum's in bed, gets home, mum's in bed, and she's just got her eyes, she's just been crying her eyes out from the most horrible night. She's got her head under the covers, and the son comes in and says, Mum, I really need to talk to you. And she just says, not now. I can't do it right now. And my heart goes out, because absolutely there was nothing left of her to be able to give him that space to be able to talk about it. And he said, I need to tell you what happened. She said, I just said, I can't right now. She just didn't want her son to see what was really going on between her father and him. And then the son just walked out. And then the next morning she went into his room and said, tell me what happened at the party. And he said, I don't want to talk about it, Mum. I don't want to talk about it. And so the guilt that happened with that mum was astronomical, because it was that one moment to connect with them. And yet that was the one moment that she had nothing to give. And that's why I constantly say to parents, we can have all of these incredible ideas and strategies that we can work with young people, but then what happens is that life gets involved. So I can give you all of these strategies, and that exact moment that that young people want to speak to you is the lowest moment in your life, and that's where we have to come up.
Here's an interesting one from Melita Simmons in Australian Capital Territory, one of our founding viewers. And she says, I love that, Sacha. So she's loving, obviously, this conversation. The open communication in terms of language. I thought I was being open. However, that reflection makes me realize that I could be more open in my language. Thank you. Isn't that great? Because, can I be honest with you? I think, a lot of my friends who I talk to, they're afraid of being that transparent and honest. And you saying, if you're not transparent and honest and available constantly, that's when a child, a kid growing up to being a teenager, they sense that that's where the communication breaks down, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Look, and I can tell you, please, and one of the things that I think is, let's not judge each other as parents. Let's just be really open to be able to say, I stuffed up, I screwed up, this was what's going on. I had a really bad day, and that was the day that a young person can come to me and that sort of stuff. And please don't think that in any way, shape, or form that I'm saying I'm perfect. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I had my vaccine and was having these bizarre kind of side effects, and all I wanted to do was go home and go to bed. And at that exact moment, my son has a crisis, and here I am. I'm like, are you kidding me? That at this exact moment that I'm having these reactions, that you need me in that. And you just kind of got to pull yourself together, and you got the shakes, and you got a fever, and you got this, and you got that, and all of this stuff's going on with you on your body because of all of those things. And that's that moment where the strength inside of me of getting up, of being a mum, and I just thought, I can't take any more,
Wow.
but there's that, and really not being so harsh on themselves, because they're not understanding. Like, as much as I was trying to explain to him, listen, mate, this is not the best time for me, he's kind of going, hang on a second, I need you right now. And that you are getting caught up within your own stuff and saying, well, hang on, I've got nothing left to give. So that's why I think as parents, we need to say, what is our intention? The intention creates the experience. What is our intention? My intention is to be the best mother possible to my children. My intention is to create a great family environment where they're not exposed to negativity and they're not exposed to all of this. But at the end of the day, my husband and I are two people that are figuring out this world as it is right now as well. So when it's not always going to be perfect, and that's where they navigate, that's where they get to understand it's not.
You know what I think, this is just fascinating, because these principles are also just as valid between adults. We have a viewer in Newcastle, we've had other comments saying that your comments, actually, they're not just taking away for their own parenting, but also relationships and all that sort of stuff. And it reminds me, Sacha, actually, what I'm hearing and I'm listening to, what I'm thinking is, I remember in my day, although it never worked for me, it was like, be quiet, be seen and not heard. And those days are over, aren't they? Completely and absolutely over. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, they're so heard. I mean, we encourage them to speak. Trust me.
They are heard.
Encourage it.
What do you mean by watch for the details? What's that point? Because that's interesting as well. We've got 5 more minutes for the interview, my love.
Oh, look, when I'm saying watch for the details, it's those little things that they do that are different. We can do this in the positive, in the negative way. The positive things would be watch for those details that are showing them who they are and those quirky little things that they do. And then that's where we enhance them to promote them to move forward in their life, in their career, what makes them happy, how to bring more goodness into their lives. Notice those little, things that spark them, so that when they're down or they're not coping so well, we know what to bring in to, enhance their happiness. So those kind of details. But on the flip side, to be able to notice the little things that when their moods change and how their moods change and what things are going on. So if they're spending lots of time in their room and they're coming out and their moods are really changing, then we know that there's something going on in there. If they're hanging out with a certain friend and every time they come back from seeing that certain friend, you notice that there's something going on with their behavior, then we know that that person is the person that's sparking something off with them. So we need to be really notice those details. And again, I'm not saying in any way this is really easy, parents. It is really difficult to be able to do this, but raising a teenager in 2021 is really difficult, and more difficult than it's ever been before, because especially with I know I'm coming at you from Melbourne being the biggest lockdown city, because I'm trying to brag about it now, but realistically around the world we have never spent more time together as a family. I mean, I never spent so much time with my parents never spent this much time with me growing up. So it's almost like we've got never-ending toddlers, because they're just constantly needing something from us. By this age, that by teenage years, I was never home. I was going out and hanging out and doing this. In a lockdown, we are with our children more than ever.
It's true. But can I ask you this question? At what point, because the way you're discussing this and enlightening us, it's, being open, being vulnerable, saying it as it is, understanding their language, understanding their details. But since when did kids, now that we're uncovering, the secret world of your teenager uncovered, since when did teenagers become adults so quickly? Like, it almost seems like, at what point, at what point do you just become vulnerable and open? Right from the beginning?
I think, look, and that's where you need to figure out which, along the line, how much you can actually expose to that person, because, again, different teenagers will have different levels of maturity, and some people you can talk about things a little bit more honest with, and then others you might say you really need to pull back and think they can't handle that kind of information right now. And that's, again, up to each family's discretion and what they believe they want to expose them to. I'm a big believer in, and this is really because, again, it's different for everybody, and you really need to go with your own instincts. Sometimes I'm okay to expose something, and sometimes I think, no, I really need. I'm the adult here. I'm the parent. I'm not the friend. I need to put my foot down on this one. This is not about me and my teenage years and exposing myself or exposing the issues that are going on in my world. You can actually give them snippets of things. So, for example, when I was talking about the vaccine and stuff, I didn't want to be able to expose my kids about what I was actually feeling, because I didn't want them make them frightened of it. So even though my body was actually physically feeling something, when they were saying what's going on, I was really playing it down, because I didn't want my kids to stress out about what's going on with mum, what's going on, how's she feeling, and this and that. Now I'm scared mum's got that.
It's a real balance.
So it's a balance of saying, no, I'm not feeling well, but I don't need to tell you that the insides of my body feel like they're falling apart right now, because that's a little bit extreme. Whereas if you ring me, Henry, I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling.
Well, we've got 2 more comments here before we finish. It's amazing how a 30-minute interview flies. Thank you all of our listeners and viewers right across the globe. I've got one from Michelle Roth, that happens to be my sister in New York City. And Michelle's comment is an interesting one. As parents, we have to have incredible reservoirs of strength and patience, and open communication is key. Then our children will begin to understand that parents are human, which is a really
100%.
And I've got another one. I've got another one for your hometown, which you say you've got the biggest best accolade in the world. Melbourne's got the biggest lockdown in the world. But anyway, Kat is saying, thank you for a great topic. Parenting in this day and age isn't easy, especially during lockdown.
100%.
I'm going to invite you back. I'm going to invite you back to the green room for a second, Sacha, and I'm going to ask you to come back and tell us, please, the one piece of advice you'd love to give people watching all around the globe with the secret world of your teenager uncovered, teenage secrets uncovered. I'm going to invite you back in the next 10 seconds and give us your pearls of wisdom from the heart of Melbourne town. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you it would be a most informative, active interview today. Sacha is, after all, the author of The Two Worlds of Your Teenager, and also she is the co-founder of Australian Teenage Expo, the largest event in Australia for teenagers. So she's got a tremendous amount of knowledge. Don't forget, next weekend, on this theme of understanding other generations, which is what Henry and Friends is all about, we have Ms. Sacha Robinson, all the way from Sydney, Australia. I don't think I've interviewed anybody in Sydney yet, my own hometown. So we're actually going super local, which is regional and international for other people. And her topic next weekend is the next generation Z of women entrepreneurs. And now, as we go 1 minute past the hour, I'm going to go back onto Sacha. Drum roll.
Look, I'm going to give it to you as quickly as possible. Firstly, I cannot give enough about listening. And when I talk about listening, I'm saying listening to your teenagers, listen to yourself, listen to your own instincts about what you believe is right for your children and your family and what's going on in your life. Everybody has a chaotic life of, a million things different going on, and with our own emotional issues and our own emotional baggage and navigating our own kids' emotional baggage and those sort of things. So please be open-minded and non-judgmental when it comes to this. Don't be so hard on yourself, and understand that I cannot say enough, intention creates the experience. Know your own instincts. And if your intention is to create a great relationship with your teenagers and do the best that you can, then what will happen is that it will unravel. And when you make mistakes, which we will make mistakes because we are human beings above all else, it's okay to make mistakes. And that is when we're vulnerable and we need to go back and say, I made a mistake, just like them. They made a mistake. They are going to make mistakes. And in fact, you want them to make the mistake now when they can fix it and come to you and talk about that, because then they will learn from it. Because when they make the mistake as an adult, it is much bigger. So listen, and be okay with the mistakes that we make.
And Sacha, we have listened with glee and information and initiating such an invigorating conversation. We must have you back again. Thank you in Sydney, Australia, from Sydney, Australia to Melbourne, Australia. We look forward to all the comments below, and thank you again. And we look forward to having you again. A big applause to Sacha Kaluri, everybody. Thank you, Sacha.
Thank you so
we love you. It's interesting. I think my adage might be, from everything that we've talked about today, is the bottom line is, secrets don't work. Doesn't matter what the age group is. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter what language you speak. The bottom line is, secrets don't work. I'm really, really excited to have you back next weekend, because we have a fantastic show with Ms. Sacha Robinson, the next new generation of women in Generation Z and their entrepreneurial shift. And what they're doing in the future. Wherever you might be in the globe, thank you so very much for joining us. All the links are down below in your description box. Please don't hesitate to like the show. Also, if you'd like to have a catalogue of all our YouTube shows, don't hesitate to go onto Henry and Friends Live YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It helps boost our community. And now, for wherever you are on the globe, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Looking forward to next weekend. And as a famous DJ used to say in America, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Bye for now.